Documented patrol logs. Authentic visual evidence. Absolute truth. This is Bodycam incident reports.
You mind telling me why you got guns pointed at me in my own driveway?
We asked the questions. Where's your documentation?
Documentation? Brother, I was born 10 miles from here.
That badge on your belt, where'd you buy it?
Buy it? The governor pinned it on me himself. Channel 4
Doing our
covered it.
job, sir. We got a tip.
Chief William Monroe's great-grandfather worked in the Newark shipyards during World War II. His grandfather became one of the first black sanitation supervisors in Newark. His father was a Newark firefighter for 32 years. William had served 31 years in law enforcement and commanded the Cedarwood Police Department for the past decade. 5 generations in New Jersey. ICE Agent Thomas Vickers, badge number 4517, with 8 years at the agency, saw none of that when he pulled into Monroe's driveway on a Saturday morning. He saw a black man loading golf clubs into an SUV with police plates and ordered him to his knees at gunpoint. Where's your documentation? The documentation was Monroe's entire life. Born at University Hospital in Newark. Rutgers degree. FBI National Academy. 3 Medals of Valor. A badge the governor had pinned on him while Channel 4 recorded. Agent Paul Dietrich, badge number 6293, noticed the badge and asked where Monroe had bought it. Brother, I was born 10 miles from here. His wife Angela watched from the kitchen window. His neighbors recorded from their porches. His officers arrived within 6 minutes and found their chief kneeling in his own driveway. 8 years federal prison for Vickers. 6 for Dietrich. $9.2 million in settlement. Donated entirely to establish the Monroe Center for Civil Rights at Rutgers. 5 generations of service. 1 morning of humiliation. And a family that had been proving they belonged since before the agents who doubted them were born. Subscribe before we continue. These stories need to be shared. Saturday morning in Cedarwood. 8:23 a.m. Chief William Monroe stood in his driveway loading golf clubs into his black Chevrolet Tahoe. The annual Police Benevolent Association charity tournament started at 10. He had been looking forward to this weekend for months. A rare Saturday without obligations, playing 18 holes with colleagues who had become friends over 3 decades. His wife Angela had made his coffee. Strong, just the way he liked it. The travel mug sat on the hood while he arranged his clubs in the trunk. 31 years in law enforcement. 10 years commanding the Cedarwood Police Department. 3 Medals of Valor hanging in his office. FBI National Academy, Class 258. A career built on the same principles his father had carried into burning buildings for 32 years. The black unmarked SUV pulled into his driveway without warning. Fast. Aggressive. Blocking his Tahoe before he could process what was happening. 4 men exited. Tactical vests. Weapons drawn. On the ground now. Monroe's first instinct was that something had happened. A threat. An emergency at the station. One of his officers in trouble. Then he registered the IC insignia on the vests. Then he registered that the weapons were pointed at him. What the hell is going on? We sat on the ground. Now, the coffee mug slipped from Monroe's hand. Shattered on the driveway. Coffee pooling across concrete. He had sealed himself last summer. 31 years of training. 31 years of knowing how quickly situations turned deadly for black men. The instinct that had kept him alive through undercover narcotics work and 3 incidents that had earned him medals of valor. He lowered himself to his knees. Raised his hands. I'm Chief William Monroe. Cedarwood Police Department. My badge is on my belt. What is this about? The lead agent, Thomas Vickers, according to the name visible on his vest, kept his weapon trained on Monroe's head. We asked the questions. Where's your documentation? Monroe almost laughed. Almost. Documentation? Brother, I was born 10 miles from here. Behind him, in the kitchen window, he could see Angela's silhouette, already reaching for her phone. The Ring doorbell camera was recording. He had installed it himself 3 years ago. Whatever was happening in his driveway, it was being documented. Agent Paul Dietrich moved to flank position. His eyes caught the badge clipped to Monroe's belt, visible even while kneeling. That badge on your belt. Where'd you buy it? Monroe's voice hardened. The casual dismissal of everything he had built over 3 decades. Buy it. The governor pinned it on me himself. Channel 4 covered it. I've been chief of police for 10 years. This is my house, my car, my driveway, and my town. Vickers shifted slightly. The confidence wavering, but the commitment remaining. We're just doing our job, sir. We got a tip. A tip? What tip? From whom? About what? Monroe kept his hands raised, but his voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded officers longer than these agents had carried badges. I'm a 31-year law enforcement veteran, FBI National Academy graduate. I've testified before the state legislature 3 times. What possible tip could justify 4 armed men in my driveway on a Saturday morning? Inside the house, Dr. Angela Monroe had seen everything from the kitchen window. Her husband of 29 years, on his knees in front of their home. The home they had owned for 22 years. The driveway where their children had learned to ride bicycles. Her hands were steady. Her voice was steel. This is Dr. Angela Monroe. There are federal agents holding my husband at gunpoint in our driveway. My husband is Chief William Monroe, Cedarwood Police Department. Send units now. She made 2 calls simultaneously, 911 and the direct line to the Cedarwood Police Department. Both answered within seconds. Outside, neighbors were emerging from their homes. Mrs. Patterson, 78 years old, bad hip, longtime resident, shuffled across the street. What are you doing to Chief Monroe? He's the police chief. I've known him for 20 years. Vickers turned. Ma'am, please stay back. This is federal business. Mr. Okonkwo from 3 doors down had his phone raised. Recording. That man is Chief Monroe. He coaches my son's basketball team. What is wrong with you? More neighbors. More phones. More witnesses. Dietrich was getting nervous. Vickers was doubling down. Everyone back. We're conducting an investigation. Monroe remained on his knees. Coffee still spreading across the concrete. Badge visible on his belt. Medals of valor in his office. Governor's commendation on his wall. You're conducting a civil rights violation is what you're conducting. I hope your body cams are on. Mine would be. The Ring doorbell captured every frame. The neighbors captured every angle. And somewhere in the distance, sirens began to wail. 3 Cedarwood police cruisers came screaming down the tree-lined street. Lights flashing. Sirens cutting through the Saturday morning quiet. An unmarked detective car followed. Lieutenant Denise Carter exited first. 22 years on the force. Monroe's second in command for the past decade. She saw her chief on his knees in his own driveway. Hands raised. Federal agents with weapons drawn. Her face transformed from confusion to fury in the space of a heartbeat. What is going on here? She approached with her weapon drawn but pointed down. The posture of someone assessing a threat. Chief Monroe, get those weapons down now. That is the chief of police of Cedarwood. Vickers half-turned. The particular arrogance of someone who thought federal authority trumped everything. Lieutenant, we're federal agents conducting. I don't care if you're the president. That man has been my chief for 10 years. Lower your weapons, or I will consider you a threat to a law enforcement officer and respond accordingly. 6 Cedarwood officers now stood on the street. Hands on weapons. Faces showing the rage of seeing their commander humiliated. The standoff lasted 8 seconds. Vickers lowered his weapon. Dietrich followed. Dr. Angela Monroe came through the front door. 29 years of marriage. 29 years of watching her husband receive commendations, promotions, recognition. Will, are you all right? Monroe rose slowly, dusted off his knees. His favorite PBA polo shirt was dirty now. Grass stains. Coffee spatters. I'm fine, Angela. These gentlemen were just leaving. But they weren't leaving. Not yet. Carter approached her chief. Sir, what are your orders? Monroe looked at the agents who had forced him to his knees in front of his home, his wife, his neighbors, his officers. I want them detained pending investigation. IDs. Badge numbers. Supervisor contact. And I want to know what tip brought them to my home. Vickers protested. You can't detain federal agents. Monroe stepped close. His voice dropped to the register that had convinced drug dealers to cooperate and corrupt officers to confess. I have been in law enforcement since before you graduated high school. I have put dealers, murderers, and corrupt cops behind bars. I know exactly what I can and cannot do. He let the words land. You came onto my property without a warrant. Drew weapons on me without cause. Forced me to my knees in front of my wife, my neighbors, and my community. You will stand right here until we figure out what the hell happened. He pulled his phone from his pocket. FBI Newark Field Office. U.S. Attorney's Office. New Jersey Attorney General. All on speed dial from 31 years of professional relationships. All answered within 3 rings. The Ring doorbell footage went viral within 24 hours. The neighbor recordings followed. Police chief held at gunpoint in own driveway. became national news before Sunday services concluded. FBI and DHS Inspector General opened a joint investigation within 48 hours. The anonymous tip was traced within a week. Not a burner phone this time, a landline. Richard Brennan, 58 years old. For houses down. Recent transplant to the neighborhood. Brennan had made multiple complaints at town council meetings about demographic changes in Cedarwood. His social media history revealed the language he used when he thought no one was listening. Invasion, replacement, neighborhoods we used to be proud of. Under questioning, he admitted the basis for his call. I didn't think a black family could afford that house. The SUV had government plates. I assumed it was stolen or being misused. The house Monroe had owned for 22 years. The SUV assigned to the chief of police by the municipality he had commanded for a decade. The assumption that destroyed 2 federal careers and cost taxpayers $9 million. Agents Vickers and Dietrich's personnel files revealed the pattern that should have ended years earlier. 23 similar incidents over 3 years. All targeting black or Hispanic homeowners in affluent New Jersey neighborhoods. All based on anonymous tips they never verified. None had resulted in any legitimate enforcement action, because none of the targets had been anything other than American citizens living in their own homes. Their text messages completed the picture. 8:07 a.m. Vickers to Dietrich. Got another one in Cedarwood. Black male, nice house, government SUV. Doesn't fit the neighborhood. 8:09 a.m. Dietrich to Vickers. Love these calls. Easy stats. 8:14 a.m. Vickers to Dietrich. Let's check his papers. The phrase, doesn't fit the neighborhood, appeared in Vickers's communications 17 times over 3 years. Body camera footage from the 2 additional agents, secured within hours, showed them standing back while Vickers and Dietrich conducted the confrontation. One camera captured audio clearly. That's really the police chief? Shit. We're done. The FBI analysis concluded that Vickers had operated a systematic pattern of discriminatory enforcement for at least 3 years. His supervisors had received 4 prior complaints, all dismissed without investigation. The federal grand jury convened 9 weeks after the incident. Indictments, civil rights violations, deprivation of rights under color of law, assault, unlawful detention, conduct unbecoming a federal officer. Vickers, Dietrich, both agents who had seen a black man in a nice neighborhood and decided he couldn't possibly belong. 2 additional agents were charged with failure to intervene, a federal offense when civil rights violations occur in your presence. Richard Brennan was charged separately, filing false federal reports. Conspiracy to violate civil rights. The federal courtroom in Newark drew national attention. A police chief forced to his knees in his own driveway. The ring footage that had been viewed 20 million times now entered into evidence. Chief William Monroe testified on the 4th day. Full dress uniform. 31 years of medals and commendations displayed. The same badge the governor had pinned on him. Channel 4's footage of that ceremony also entered into evidence. I was loading my golf clubs. Charity tournament. My wife had made my coffee. It was supposed to be a good Saturday. What happened when the agents arrived? They ordered me to the ground. Weapons drawn. No identification. No explanation. Did you comply? I lowered myself to my knees. Raised my hands. 31 years of training. I know how quickly these situations turn deadly for black men. Did you identify yourself? Multiple times. I told them I was chief of police. I showed them my badge. I told them the governor had pinned it on me. They didn't believe any of it. The ring footage played. The jury watched Monroe kneel in his own driveway. Watched the coffee spill. Watched the neighbors emerge. Watched his wife's silhouette in the kitchen window. Where's your documentation? That badge on your belt. Where'd you buy it? Dr. Angela Monroe testified next. 29 years of marriage. The woman who had watched her husband receive the Medal of Valor 3 times. I was standing at my kitchen window. I saw my husband, the man who has protected our community for 30 years, on his knees with guns pointed at his head. How did that affect you? I've seen him receive commendations. I've seen him promoted. I've seen him honored. I've never seen him look the way he looked that morning. Something broke. In him. In me. The text messages were displayed. Doesn't fit the neighborhood. Love these calls. Easy stats. Let's check his papers. The defense argued good faith. Anonymous tip. Standard procedure. The prosecutor's response was precise. Standard procedure doesn't include ignoring police department plates. Standard procedure doesn't include mocking a chief's badge. Standard procedure requires verification before you draw weapons on a homeowner in his own driveway. She displayed the pattern. 23 stops. 0 legitimate enforcement actions. All targeting minorities in affluent neighborhoods. This wasn't good faith. This was hunting. And on Saturday morning, they hunted the chief of police. The jury deliberated 5 hours. Guilty. All counts. Vickers. Guilty. All counts. Dietrich. Guilty. Failure to intervene. Both additional agents. Sentencing followed 8 weeks later. Vickers. 8 years federal prison. Enhanced for pattern of conduct and assault on a law enforcement officer. Dietrich. 6 years. Participation despite doubts. Additional agents. 2 years probation and permanent bar from law enforcement. All were led from the courtroom. The agents who had demanded documentation now documented themselves in the federal system. The civil settlement was announced 4 months after sentencing. The Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay $9.2 million rather than face extended litigation that would expose systemic failures across multiple field offices. The amount reflected not just one incident, but a pattern that supervisors had failed to prevent. Chief Monroe announced the distribution at a press conference in front of Cedarwood Police Headquarters. My father was a Newark firefighter. He ran into burning buildings for 32 years. He taught me that service means showing up when others run away. That protection means everyone, not just people who look a certain way or live in certain neighborhoods. He paused. I'm donating the entire settlement. Every penny. $3.5 million to establish the Monroe Center for Civil Rights and Policing at Rutgers University, Newark. Research on bias in law enforcement. Training programs for agencies pursuing reform. $2.5 million to the New Jersey State Police Memorial Foundation, honoring officers who had given everything. $2 million to scholarships for first-generation college students pursuing law enforcement careers. The next generation of officers who might come from neighborhoods like the one where his great-grandfather had worked the shipyards. $1.2 million to the Newark Boys and Girls Club, where he had volunteered for 15 years. The young people who needed mentorship most. I don't need this money. What I need is change. What I need is a country where police chiefs don't kneel in their own driveways. Where families who have served 5 generations don't have to prove they belong. ICE's Newark field office was placed under DOJ consent decree. 5 years of federal oversight. Mandatory tip verification for all residential operations. Required supervisor approval for any enforcement at private homes. For supervisors who had dismissed prior complaints against Vickers were forced to resign. The chain of command that had enabled 3 years of discriminatory enforcement was dismantled. New Jersey's legislature acted within the year. The Monroe Act, requiring verified probable cause and supervisor approval for any immigration enforcement at private residences. The governor signed it on the steps of the State House. Chief Monroe served this state for 31 years. His family has served for 5 generations. The least we can do is ensure no one else kneels in their own driveway. Richard Brennan, the neighbor who had called the tip, was sentenced to 18 months probation, $150,000 in civil damages, and mandatory anti-bias training. He sold his house 6 months after the verdict. Moved out of state. The New Jersey State Chiefs of Police Conference was held 3 months after the verdict. 400 police chiefs from across the state gathered in Atlantic City for their annual meeting. Chief William Monroe was scheduled to receive an award. Lifetime Achievement. 31 years of service. He walked to the podium expecting polite applause. The audience rose. All 400 chiefs. Standing ovation. It lasted 5 minutes. Chiefs he had trained. Chiefs he had testified alongside. Chiefs who had watched the ring footage and seen one of their own humiliated in his own driveway. Black chiefs. White chiefs. Hispanic chiefs. Asian chiefs. All standing. All applauding. All saying, without words, that what had happened to Monroe could have happened to any of them who didn't fit someone's idea of what a chief should look like. Monroe waited for the ovation to end. His voice caught when he spoke. 31 years ago, I walked into the Newark Police Academy. 22 years old. The only black recruit in my class. They told me I'd never make detective. I made detective. They told me I'd never make sergeant. I made sergeant. They told me I'd never make chief. The governor pinned the badge on me himself. He looked at his colleagues. They never stopped telling me I didn't belong. And on a Saturday morning in my own driveway, federal agents agreed with them. He paused. But I do belong. We all belong. Every officer who puts on a badge and serves their community, regardless of what they look like, belongs. And anyone who says otherwise is wrong. Provably, documentably, convicted in federal court wrong. The second standing ovation lasted longer than the first. His daughter Sarah, the FBI special agent who had monitored every step of the federal case while recused, watched from the back of the room. She had joined the bureau because of her father, had become an agent because he had shown her what service meant. Seeing 400 chiefs honor him, that meant something. But what meant more was what he said after. I'm retiring next year. 32 years will be enough. And I'm going to spend my retirement doing what I should have done more of, teaching the next generation. At Rutgers. At the academy. Anywhere they'll have me. He smiled. Because someone has to tell them what they're getting into. And what it's worth anyway. Thomas Vickers began serving his 8-year sentence at FCI Fort Dix. The facility sat 40 miles from Cedarwood, close enough for the memory to remain fresh. His appeals were denied. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked. His pension was forfeited. Paul Dietrich completed processing at a medium security facility in Virginia. 6 years. The partner who had asked about the badge discovering that questions have consequences. The 2 additional agents who had failed to intervene served their probation. Permanent bar from law enforcement. Careers ended. Richard Brennan served his 18 months of probation. Completed his anti-bias training. Wrote a check for $150,000. Moved to a retirement community in Florida where no one knew his history. Chief William Monroe retired after 32 years of service. The ceremony was held in front of Cedarwood Police Headquarters, the building that would be renamed in his honor. The William Monroe Public Safety Building. His wife Angela stood beside him. His children, the FBI agent, the Navy lieutenant, the surgical resident, the Morehouse senior, flanked their parents. Lieutenant Denise Carter, now Chief Carter, his successor, unveiled the new sign. Chief Monroe built this department. He built a culture of integrity, accountability, and service. And when the worst moment came, when he was on his knees in his own driveway, he handled it the way he handled everything. With dignity, with procedure, with absolute faith that the truth would prevail. She turned to her mentor. Chief, on behalf of everyone who served under you, thank you for showing us what leadership looks like. Even when leadership looks like staying calm while someone points a gun at your head. Monroe accepted the honor. Looked at the building that would carry his name. My father ran into burning buildings. My grandfather cleaned the streets. My great-grandfather built ships for the war effort. 5 generations of service. 5 generations of being told we didn't belong. He smiled. We belonged the whole time. We just had to prove it. Over and over. Until proving it became the family tradition. His golf clubs still sat in his garage. The same clubs he had been loading that Saturday morning. He hadn't played since. I'll get back to it, he told his wife. Someday. But his grandchildren were learning to putt on his lawn. The next generation already finding their swing. Dr. Angela Monroe still stood at her kitchen window some mornings. The same window where she had watched her husband kneel in their driveway. The same view of the concrete where his coffee had spilled. They had repaired the concrete. Resealed it. The stain was gone. The memory was not. Do you ever think about moving? William asked her once. This is our home. We're not leaving because of what they did. I know. I just wonder if it's hard. Seeing that driveway every day. It's hard. But it's our driveway. We didn't earn it by leaving. The case file remains in federal databases. Case number 2024 CR 01178. Subject: civil rights violations, deprivation of rights under color of law, assault, unlawful detention, failure to intervene. Location: 247 Oakwood Lane, Cedarwood, New Jersey. Outcome: for convictions 8, 6, and probation respectively. 9.2 million settlement. Statewide legislation. Institutional reform. Principle established. Driveways are protected. Documentation matters. And some families have been proving they belong for 5 generations, long enough to outlast anyone who doubts them. Chief William Monroe proved that principle the only way available. By kneeling when ordered. By staying calm when threatened. By documenting everything. By donating every dollar to ensure others wouldn't have to prove what he had proven. The Monroe Center for Civil Rights and Policing opened at Rutgers the following year. Its first class of students included 3 young officers from Newark, the city where Monroe had started his career 32 years earlier. He taught the inaugural seminar himself, Constitutional Policing in the 21st Century. His first lecture included the Ring doorbell footage. This is what happens when the Constitution fails. This is what it costs to make it work again. And this is why we do the work, so the next generation doesn't have to kneel in their own driveways. The students watched in silence. The lesson landed. Some education comes from textbooks. Some comes from watching a police chief explain why he was once on his knees in his own driveway. 5 generations of service. 5 generations of proving. And a kitchen window where a wife still watches the driveway, remembering the morning it all changed, and the 32 years that made her husband the man who survived it.
License and registration. You want to tell me where you got this vehicle?
This is my car. I'm coming from a ceremony at Camp Lejeune. Is there a problem, sir?
We got a report about a stolen vehicle matching this description. I need proof this is yours.
I'm a staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. Registration's in the glove box.
Step out of the vehicle.
ICE Agent Raymond Lockhart, badge number 5219 with 6 years at the agency, pulled over a black Dodge Charger on Highway 17 near Jacksonville, North Carolina, and approached the driver's window. He saw a black man in a dark navy coat with gold buttons and immediately demanded to know where he got the vehicle. Staff Sergeant Malik Carter, hands at 10 and 2 exactly as his father taught him, explained he was coming from a ceremony at Camp Lejeune. Lockhart ignored the Marine Corps dress blues, ignored the Bronze Star ribbon visible on Carter's chest, ignored the Purple Heart, ignored everything except the color of the driver's skin. We got a report about a stolen vehicle matching this description. Step out of the car. There was no report. The investigation would prove it. Lockhart had no authority to conduct traffic stops. ICRO agents don't have that power. He had fabricated the entire basis for the encounter. Carter complied, remained calm, did everything right, and still found himself handcuffed against his own vehicle on a public highway, his cover on the ground, his medals catching the afternoon sun, while passing drivers stared at a Marine in dress blues being arrested for nothing. Gunnery Sergeant Theodore Williams, a white Marine who recognized Carter's vehicle from the ceremony, pulled over and demanded answers. Within 15 minutes, Marine Corps military police arrived. Within 48 hours, the body cam footage went viral. Within 6 months, Agent Raymond Lockhart was sentenced to 13 years in federal prison. And Staff Sergeant Malik Carter, Bronze Star recipient, Purple Heart recipient, 4th-generation Marine whose great-grandfather was one of the first black Marines at Montford Point, donated every penny of his $5.8 million settlement to veteran organizations and military family scholarships. Because some things matter more than money, and some uniforms should have protected him. Subscribe to the channel before we continue. These stories need to be told. Staff Sergeant Malik Carter had just experienced one of the proudest days of his Marine Corps career. 2 hours earlier, he had stood in the base theater at Camp Lejeune while his battalion commander pinned the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal to his chest. 200 Marines had watched. His wife Jasmine sat in the front row with their 3-year-old twin daughters, who didn't understand the ceremony, but knew Daddy was important. 10 years of service. 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan. A Bronze Star for leading his squad through an ambush that could have killed them all. A Purple Heart for the shrapnel that still set off metal detectors. And now this. Recognition for exceptional leadership during a training exercise that had prevented serious injuries to 3 junior Marines. After the ceremony, he took photographs with his family, promised to meet them at home for a celebration dinner, then made a last-minute decision. He would drive home in his dress blues. His father, a retired Army First Sergeant with 28 years of service, would want to see him in full uniform. The medals, the ribbons, the evidence of a career built on sacrifice and discipline. Carter kissed his daughters goodbye and got into his black Dodge Charger, purchased new last year, paid for with combat deployment savings. The first nice car he had ever owned. Highway 17 stretched between Camp Lejeune and Jacksonville, a familiar route. 10 miles of Carolina Road he had driven hundreds of times. He never saw the unmarked vehicle waiting in the median. Agent Raymond Lockhart had been parked there for 2 hours, running what he called random immigration checks, an unauthorized practice he had conducted dozens of times, always targeting vehicles driven by minorities. He spotted the black Charger, spotted the black driver, activated his lights. Carter pulled over immediately, hands on the steering wheel. 10 and 2. Exactly as his father had taught him when he was 16. License and registration. You want to tell me where you got this vehicle? Carter looked at the agent through the open window. The question didn't register at first. This is my car. I'm coming from a ceremony at Camp Lejeune. Is there a problem, sir? Lockhart's body cam was active, recording everything that followed. We got a report about a stolen vehicle matching this description. I need proof this is yours. Carter processed the words. Stolen vehicle. His vehicle. The one he had purchased with deployment money. The one registered in his name. I'm a staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. The registration is in the glove box. May I reach for it? Lockhart ignored the uniform, the gold buttons, the ribbons. Step out of the vehicle. Carter remained calm. 10 years of Marine Corps discipline. 2 combat deployments where panic meant death. Sir, I'd like to know what I'm being stopped for. I haven't committed any traffic violation. I gave you an order. Out of the car. Now, with respect, I'm a decorated Marine. I just came from an award ceremony. You can see my uniform. You can see my medals. There's no stolen vehicle here. Lockhart opened the driver's door, reached in and grabbed Carter's arm. I don't care if you're the commandant of the Marine Corps. When I tell you to get out, you get out. Carter didn't resist, didn't pull away. The training that had kept him alive in Helmand Province, now keeping him alive on a North Carolina highway. But he spoke clearly, ensuring the body cam captured every word. I want your name, badge number, and supervisor. This is an unlawful stop. Lockhart yanked him from the vehicle. Carter's cover, the dress blue cap that completed his uniform, fell to the asphalt. The Bronze Star ribbon caught the afternoon sun. The Purple Heart beside it. The decorations of a man who had bled for the country whose agent was now assaulting him. I'm not armed. I'm in dress blues. There's nowhere to conceal a weapon in this uniform. You can see that. Lockhart forced him against the Charger, kicked his legs apart, began an aggressive pat-down that violated every protocol for interacting with uniformed military personnel. He found Carter's wallet, opened it. Military ID. Staff Sergeant Malik J. Carter, United States Marine Corps. North Carolina driver's license. Same name, same face, credit cards, all matching, and a photograph. 2 little girls in matching pink dresses. The twins, smiling at the camera. Could be fake. People buy these online all the time. Call Camp Lejeune. Call my battalion. I'm Staff Sergeant Carter, 2nd Battalion, 6th Marines. I've served this country for 10 years. I have a Bronze Star for valor. Please, just verify who I am. You're coming with me until I figure out what's going on. The handcuffs closed around Carter's wrists. A Bronze Star recipient. A combat veteran. A father of 3-year-old twins. Cuffed against his own car on a public highway. Passing vehicles slowed. Drivers stared. A Marine in dress blues being arrested on the side of the road. Carter's cover lay on the asphalt. The emblem of the eagle, globe, and anchor facing upward. The symbol of a corps that had accepted his great-grandfather when few institutions would. Lockhart pushed him toward the unmarked vehicle. Sir, you're making a mistake. A serious mistake. The only mistake is whatever you did to afford that car. A vehicle pulled over behind the Charger. A white man in civilian clothes stepped out, walking toward the confrontation with purpose. Gunnery Sergeant Theodore Williams. Same ceremony. Same base theater. He had recognized Carter's Charger from the license plate frame. A custom piece reading, USMC Infantry. What the hell is going on here? Staff Sergeant Carter. Lockhart turned. Sir, step back. This doesn't concern you. The hell it doesn't. That's Staff Sergeant Malik Carter. He just received a commendation medal 2 hours ago. I watched him get it. What are you doing? Williams already had his phone out. Recording. I'm calling the base. I'm calling the Provost Marshal. You just handcuffed a decorated combat veteran in his dress blues on a public highway. The Marine Corps military police vehicles arrived in 14 minutes. 2 Humvees from Camp Lejeune's Provost Marshal Office. For MPs and combat utilities. The response to a report that one of their own was being detained on Highway 17. Behind them, a government sedan. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Freeman, Carter's battalion commander, had received Williams's call while still on base. He had driven personally. Freeman approached the scene. His face showed the particular fury of a commander seeing one of his Marines in handcuffs. Agent, I am Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Freeman, United States Marine Corps. You are currently detaining one of my best Marines, a Bronze Star recipient, a Purple Heart recipient, a man who has bled for this country. He stepped closer. Uncuff him immediately. Lockhart's confidence wavered, the posture that had controlled the encounter now crumbling. Sir, I was conducting a routine check. Uncuff him now. The command voice of a Marine officer. The tone that moved battalions. Lockhart removed the handcuffs. Carter rubbed his wrists. His dress uniform was scuffed from being pressed against the charger. His cover still lay on the ground. Freeman picked it up, brushed off the dirt, handed it to Carter with the respect due a decorated Marine. Staff Sergeant, are you all right? Yes, sir. Just want to get home to my family. You will. Soon. Freeman turned to Lockhart. Agent, I want your name, badge number, supervisor, and field office. You will be hearing from the Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, and my personal attorney. He gestured to Carter's uniform. This Marine was coming from an awards ceremony where he was honored for his service. He was driving home to see his wife and daughters. And you treated him like a criminal. The MPs secured the scene, collected Lockhart's information, documented everything. Williams remained, phone still recording. Additional footage to supplement the body cam. What's the stolen vehicle report? Freeman asked. Lockhart hesitated. I received information. From whom? What's the case number? What agency reported the theft? Silence. There is no report, is there? More silence. Freeman looked at the MPs. I want this agent's body cam footage preserved immediately. I want the Marine Corps Legal Services contacted. And I want Naval Criminal Investigative Service notified. He turned back to Lockhart. I see enforcement and removal operations agents don't have authority to conduct traffic stops. You know that. Everyone in your agency knows that. Whatever you thought you were doing here, it wasn't legal. Carter stood by his charger. Dress blue scuffed. Wrists still red from the handcuffs. But his bearing remained. The posture of a Marine who had survived worse than this. Sir, I'd like to go home now. My daughters are waiting. Staff Sergeant, you're dismissed. Lieutenant Colonel's orders. Carter looked at Lockhart one final time. I've been shot at by the Taliban. I've led Marines through ambushes. I've earned every ribbon on this uniform. And you couldn't see any of it. He got into his charger, drove home to his family. The investigation had already begun. The body cam footage was obtained by Marine Corps Legal within 24 hours. FBI Civil Rights Division received a copy within 48 hours. The footage went viral shortly after. A Bronze Star Marine in dress blues, handcuffed on the side of a highway. The Marine Corps Commandant issued a public statement condemning the incident. The Secretary of Defense was briefed. The story reached national news before the weekend ended. The investigation revealed what the footage had suggested. Agent Raymond Lockhart had no authorization to conduct traffic stops. ICE enforcement and removal operations agents don't have that authority. Their jurisdiction covers immigration enforcement, not vehicle interdiction. The stolen vehicle report was completely fabricated. No such report existed in any law enforcement database. Not local, not state, not federal. Lockhart had invented the pretext entirely. His personnel file revealed the pattern. 34 similar unauthorized stops over 18 months. All targeting Black or Hispanic drivers. All based on fabricated reports of stolen vehicles or suspicious activity. None had resulted in any legitimate enforcement action, because none of the targets had done anything wrong. His stop records showed the methodology. Vehicles, 34 Black drivers, 21 Hispanic drivers, 13 white drivers, 0 legitimate enforcement actions, 0. The numbers told the story without commentary. Text messages subpoenaed from his phone completed the picture. Fishing on 17 today. Lots of nice cars coming off Lejeune. Caught a good one yesterday. BMW, Black driver. Made him wait an hour while I verified his story. These people think the uniform protects them. Wrong uniform, buddy. Social media posts revealed the attitudes behind the actions. Jokes about catching illegals. Mocking comments about Black service members. Membership in groups where agents shared strategies for street justice. One post, made 3 months before the Carter stop. Marines coming off base think they're untouchable. Love reminding them who's really in charge. The FBI analysis concluded that Lockhart had operated a systematic pattern of racial targeting under the guise of immigration enforcement. His supervisors had failed to monitor his activities. His unauthorized stops had never been questioned. Gunnery Sergeant Williams provided testimony. The ceremony, the recognition, the moment he saw Carter's charger on the shoulder with his fellow Marine in handcuffs. I knew something was wrong. Staff Sergeant Carter had just received a commendation. He was in dress blues. There was no legitimate reason for that stop. Lieutenant Colonel Freeman documented the damage to Carter, to unit morale, to the relationship between military installations and federal agencies. The federal grand jury convened 10 weeks after the incident. Indictments, civil rights violations, deprivation of rights under color of law, assault, unlawful detention, impersonating authority, false statements, conduct unbecoming a federal officer. The charges reflected not just one stop, but 34. The federal courtroom in Raleigh drew national attention. The image that had gone viral, a Marine in dress blues being handcuffed, now entered into evidence. Staff Sergeant Malik Carter testified on the fourth day. He wore his dress blues with full medals. The Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, the Commendation Medal he had received 2 hours before Lockhart pulled him over. I was driving home from an awards ceremony. My battalion commander had just pinned a medal on my chest. My wife and daughters had watched. I decided to wear my dress blues home so my father could see me. What happened when Agent Lockhart approached your vehicle? He asked where I got the car. Before anything else. Not license and registration. Where did I get the vehicle? How did you respond? I told him it was my car. I told him I was coming from Camp Lejeune. I asked if there was a problem. What did he say? He said there was a stolen vehicle report. He demanded I step out. Did you comply? I asked what I was being stopped for. He grabbed my arm and pulled me from the vehicle. The body cam footage played. The jury watched Lockhart approach. Watched the questions about the vehicle. Watched the Marine in dress blues being yanked from his car. I don't care if you're the commandant of the Marine Corps. The medal's visible. The cover falling to the ground. The handcuffs closing. My great-grandfather was a Montford Point Marine, one of the first black men allowed to serve in the Corps. He fought for a country that wouldn't let him eat at the same lunch counter as white people. Carter paused. 70 years later, his great-grandson was handcuffed on a highway for driving while black. In Marine Corps dress blues. The text messages were displayed. These people think the uniform protects them. Wrong uniform, buddy. Marines coming off base think they're untouchable. Love reminding them who's really in charge. The defense argued confusion. Mistaken identity. Following protocol. The prosecutor's response was surgical. Protocol doesn't include fabricating stolen vehicle reports. Protocol doesn't include unauthorized traffic stops. Protocol doesn't include handcuffing Bronze Star recipients because you don't believe black men can own nice cars. She displayed the pattern. 34 stops. 0 legitimate enforcement actions. 0 white drivers. This wasn't confusion. This was hunting. And on November 22nd, Agent Lockhart's prey was a decorated combat veteran who had bled for this country. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty. All counts. Sentencing followed 8 weeks later. Agent Lockhart, you abused your authority in the most egregious manner this court has witnessed. You targeted Americans based on race. You fabricated legal pretexts. You humiliated a decorated combat veteran in his dress blues on a public highway. The judge reviewed the sentencing guidelines. 13 years federal prison. Enhanced for pattern of conduct, assault on a service member, and the particular offense of disgracing the uniform of a man who has earned every honor this nation can bestow. Lockhart was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, the same restraints he had placed on a Bronze Star recipient. The civil settlement was announced 4 months after sentencing. The Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay $5.8 million rather than face extended litigation that would expose systemic failures across multiple field offices. The amount reflected not just one incident, but a pattern that supervisors had failed to prevent. Staff Sergeant Carter announced the distribution at a press conference at Camp Lejeune. His wife Jasmine stood beside him. Their twin daughters, now 4 years old, held their mother's hands. My great-grandfather was a Montford Point Marine, one of the first black men allowed to serve in the Corps. He served a country that treated him as less than equal because he believed the uniform meant something. He paused. I believe it too. And I believe that what happened to me cannot be allowed to happen to anyone else. He announced the allocation. $2 million to the Montford Point Marine Association, in honor of his great-grandfather and the Black Marines who had fought for the right to serve. $2 million to scholarships for children of military families, ensuring that the next generation had opportunities their parents had sacrificed to provide. $1.8 million to veteran support organizations, programs that helped service members transition to civilian life and cope with the challenges of military service. I don't need this money. What I need is change. What I need is a country where Marines can drive home from award ceremonies without being handcuffed on the side of the road. ICE's Wilmington field office was placed under DOJ consent decree. 5 years of federal oversight. Mandatory traffic stop prohibitions. Required authorization for all vehicle encounters. For supervisors who had failed to monitor Lockhart's unauthorized activities were forced to resign. The chain of command that had enabled 18 months of targeting was dismantled. Congress invited Carter to testify on racial profiling of service members. His testimony lasted 3 hours. His recommendations became the foundation for oversight legislation protecting military personnel from pretextual stops. The Marine Corps promoted Carter to gunnery sergeant 3 months after the verdict. His battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Freeman, personally pinned on the new rank. Gunnery Sergeant Carter, you represented everything a Marine should be during the most difficult moment of your career. You remained calm. You documented. You followed procedure. And you ensured that justice was served. The twin daughters watched from the front row, matching Marine Corps t-shirts. My daddy's a hero. They understood now, not the ceremony, but what their father represented. Gunnery Sergeant Theodore Williams received a letter of commendation for moral courage. The Marine who had stopped when he saw a fellow Marine in distress, who had recorded footage that supplemented the body cam, who had refused to let injustice proceed without witness. I didn't do anything special, he said at the commendation ceremony. I did what any Marine would do. I saw one of ours being treated wrong. I stopped. The black Dodge Charger remained in Carter's possession. The car that had been called stolen by a man who couldn't imagine a black Marine owning it. New license plate frame. Custom made. Montford Point legacy, 4 generations of Marines. Carter's father, retired Army First Sergeant Jerome Carter, saw the frame the first time his son drove home after the trial. That's right, the old soldier said. Let them know who we are. I wanted something that told the story, without having to explain. You shouldn't have to explain. None of us should have to explain. But they did. Every generation. Every uniform. Every encounter. The Carter family had served since 1942. Montford Point. Vietnam. Desert Storm. Afghanistan. For generations of sacrifice for a country that still questioned whether they belonged in nice cars. In dress uniforms. In positions of honor. Do you regret it? Jasmine asked him one evening. Any of it? Which part?
Staying in. After everything. Carter considered the question. The shrapnel in his leg. The friends lost in Helmand Province. The handcuffs on a highway shoulder. I regret what happened. I don't regret who I am. I don't regret serving. My great-grandfather didn't quit when they wouldn't let him in the same barracks as white Marines. My grandfather didn't quit when they sent him to Vietnam. My father didn't quit when they gave him every crap assignment in the Army. He looked at his dress blues hanging in the closet. The Bronze Star. The Purple Heart. The Commendation Medal. I won't quit either. That's what they want. For us to quit. To decide it isn't worth it. He turned to his wife. It's worth it. We're worth it. And I'll keep proving it until I don't have to anymore. Maya and Mia Carter turned for the spring after the trial. Their birthday party was held at the Fayetteville Community Center, the same venue where their father had coached youth basketball for 3 years. The same hardwood where he had taught young people discipline, teamwork, and respect. The guest list included Marines from Carter's battalion, kids from the basketball program, family who had driven from across North Carolina. The twins didn't fully understand what had happened to their father. They knew he had been on TV. They knew people called him a hero. They knew their picture, the one in Daddy's wallet, had been shown in a courtroom. Daddy, why did that man put handcuffs on you? Carter knelt to his daughter's level. Because he made a mistake. He looked at Daddy and didn't see what was there. What didn't he see? He didn't see Daddy's uniform. He didn't see Daddy's medals. He didn't see that Daddy is a Marine. What did he see? Carter paused. The question his daughters would eventually understand. The question every black parent in America eventually had to answer. He saw something that wasn't there. He saw a story in his head that wasn't true. That's silly. You're right there. You're right. It is silly. And sometimes grown-ups believe silly things. Maya, the twin who asked more questions, pressed further. Is he in trouble? Yes. He's in trouble for a long time. Because what he did was wrong. Good.
He was mean to you. He was.
But we don't stay angry, do we? We stay strong. We stay proud. And we show everyone who we are. Mia, the quieter twin, had been listening carefully. Daddy, when I grow up, can I be a Marine like you? Carter smiled. The question every father wants to hear. The question every black father fears. You can be anything you want. Anything at all. I want to be a Marine. And catch bad guys. Then that's what you'll be. He hugged both daughters. Held them close. The future he was protecting. The legacy he was continuing. 4 generations of service. Maybe 5, someday. Raymond Lockhart began serving his 13-year sentence at FCI Butner. The facility sat 60 miles from Highway 17, close enough to remember what he had done there. His appeals were denied. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked. His pension was forfeited. The 4 supervisors who had enabled 18 months of unauthorized stops found new careers outside federal service. The consent decree required accountability at every level. Gunnery Sergeant Malik Carter was selected for promotion to Master Sergeant 2 years after the incident. E8. The senior enlisted ranks where careers become legacies. He was also nominated for Sergeant Major Academy, the training that could lead to the highest enlisted position in the Marine Corps. The black Charger sat in his driveway in Fayetteville. Same vehicle. Same plates. The license plate frame visible to everyone who passed. Montford Point legacy. 4 generations of Marines. Maybe 5 generations, someday. Maya had started talking about boot camp. Mia wanted to be a pilot. Their great-great-grandfather had trained at Montford Point when the Corps was segregated. Had fought for a country that wouldn't serve him at lunch counters. Had earned his place in history by refusing to accept that he didn't belong. Their great-grandfather had served in Vietnam with the 1st Marine Division. Had come home to a country that spat on veterans. Had kept his uniform in his closet until the day he died. Their grandfather had served 28 years in the Army. Had retired as a 1st sergeant. Had taught his son that hands on the wheel and cooperation were the tools of survival. Their father had served 10 years and counting. Had earned a Bronze Star for valor. Had been handcuffed in his dress blues, and had donated every penny of the settlement to organizations that would help others. The case file remains in federal databases. Case number 2024 CR 01432. Subject: civil rights violations, deprivation of rights under color of law, assault, unlawful detention, impersonating authority, false statements. Location: Highway 17, Onslow County, North Carolina. Outcome: conviction. 13 years federal prison. $5.8 million settlement. Institutional reform. Principle established. Uniforms matter, but not the way some people think. A Marine in dress blues deserves respect. But so does any American driving home. The Constitution doesn't check for medals before it applies. Gunnery Sergeant Malik Carter proved that principle the only way available. By keeping his hands visible. By staying calm. By documenting everything. By continuing to serve. 4 generations of sacrifice. 4 generations of proving. And a license plate frame that tells the story. Montford Point legacy. Some families have been proving they belong since before the people who doubt them were born. The Carters are one of them.
You still haven't told me why you pulled me over, Sheriff.
Ma'am, vehicles like this are often flagged for theft. Just need to verify ownership.
Flagged for theft? I've driven this car for 3 years. It's in my name.
That may be, but someone in your situation driving a car like this raises questions.
United States District Judge Vanessa Thornton had spent 16 years presiding over civil rights cases from the federal bench. She had heard testimony from hundreds of victims of racial profiling. She thought she understood their experience. On February 14, 2025, she learned what it actually felt like. Deputy Clint Barker pulled her over on Highway 49 and claimed her Lexus was flagged for theft. There was no flag, no report, no traffic violation, just a black woman in a nice car. Someone in your situation, driving a car like this raises questions. My situation? You mean black? When Judge Thornton identified herself, Barker's hand moved toward his weapon. When she produced her judicial credentials, his face went pale. 23 prior complaints in his personnel file, all dismissed. A pattern of stopping minority drivers in luxury vehicles. Social media posts questioning whether black families deserved nice neighborhoods. 8 years federal prison. $35 million verdict. The largest police misconduct award in Georgia history. And a judge who returned to her bench with new understanding. I thought I knew what victims of profiling experienced. Until I was on that roadside, watching an officer's hand move toward his gun because I was black in a nice car. I didn't truly know. Now I know. Subscribe to the channel. These stories need to be shared. Friday morning. Highway 49 through Peach County. Judge Vanessa Thornton was driving to Fort Valley to visit her 87-year-old mother. A standing ritual when her court docket permitted. Beatrice Thornton still lived in the house where Vanessa had grown up. Still sharp. Still proud. Still wanted to see her daughter, looking successful. Today Vanessa was bringing her mother's favorite pastries from a Macon bakery, planning to take her to a doctor's appointment. The simple business of a daughter caring for the woman who had raised her. She was dressed professionally but comfortably. Black blazer, silk blouse, elegant silver necklace. Her mother liked to see her looking the part. Her silver Lexus LS 500 hummed along the highway. A gift to herself when she received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Bar Association. The car she had earned through 16 years on the federal bench. Appointed by the President. Confirmed by the Senate. United States District Judge for the Middle District of Georgia. Before that, 9 years as an assistant U.S. attorney prosecuting civil rights violations. Before that, 7 years as a partner at one of Atlanta's most prestigious law firms. Columbia Law School. Spelman College valedictorian. 6 generations of her family in Georgia, from slavery to sharecropping to the federal bench. She had presided over Fourth Amendment cases for 16 years. She knew the law better than most lawyers who appeared before her. As she passed through Peach County, she noticed the sheriff's cruiser pull out from a speed trap position. She wasn't speeding. Her registration was current. Her taillights worked. She had checked them last week. But she also knew exactly why she was about to be pulled over. The cruiser followed her for 2 miles. No lights. Just following. Waiting. Then the blue lights activated. Judge Thornton pulled over safely onto the shoulder. Put the car in park. Placed her hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. Lowered her window. She had done this before. Every black person who drove nice cars in rural Georgia had done this before. Deputy Clint Barker approached her window. Some traffic stops seem routine at first. Have you ever sensed that a situation was about to go wrong before it actually did? Share your experience in the comments. Deputy Clint Barker. Badge number 1847. 12 years with the Peach County Sheriff's Office. He approached the driver's window but didn't introduce himself. Didn't state the reason for the stop. Just stood there, looking into the car. Assessing. His body cam was recording. The dash cam in his cruiser had captured him following Judge Thornton for 2 miles before the stop. You still haven't told me why you pulled me over, Sheriff. Her voice was measured. The tone she used when attorneys made weak arguments in her courtroom. Ma'am, vehicles like this are often flagged for theft. Just need to verify ownership. Judge Thornton's head tilted slightly. The expression that preceded devastating rulings. Flagged for theft? I've driven this car for 3 years. It's in my name. That may be, but someone in your situation, driving a car like this raises questions. The words hung in the February morning air. My situation? You mean black? Barker stepped back slightly. I didn't say that. I'm just doing my job. Your job is to enforce the law, not to assume a black woman in a nice car must have stolen it. She kept her hands visible on the steering wheel. The discipline of someone who understood how quickly these situations escalated. What's your badge number, deputy? Barker bristled. Ma'am, I don't appreciate the attitude. Step out of the vehicle. On what grounds? What traffic violation did I commit? What crime am I suspected of? What probable cause do you have to order me from my vehicle? I don't need to explain myself to you. Out of the car. Now. Judge Thornton didn't move. I'm not getting out of this car. I've committed no crime. I know my rights better than you do. I should know. I rule on Fourth Amendment cases for a living. Barker's hand moved toward his weapon. Ma'am, this is your last warning. Judge Thornton's voice turned to ice. The tone that had silenced hostile attorneys and unruly courtrooms for 16 years. Deputy Barker, I am United States District Judge Vanessa Thornton. I have presided over this judicial district for 16 years. And if you draw that weapon, I promise you will spend the rest of your career answering for it in my colleagues' courtrooms. When procedure meets prejudice, the footage tells the truth. If you believe documentation matters in situations like these, consider leaving a like. It helps more people understand why proper protocols exist. Barker froze, hand still near his weapon. Judge, you expect me to believe. I'm reaching for my credentials. Watch my hands. Judge Thornton moved slowly, deliberately, the same care she instructed defendants to use when reaching for identification. She pulled her judicial ID from her purse, her federal court badge, held them up where the body cam could capture them clearly. United States District Judge, Middle District of Georgia, appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate. She let the credentials speak for themselves. I have sat on the federal bench since before you had your badge. Now, I want your supervisor here. I want your dash cam preserved. And I want to know what stolen vehicle report you were supposedly responding to. Barker's face had gone pale, the particular pallor of someone understanding the magnitude of their mistake. He stepped back from the vehicle, keyed his radio with a shaking hand. Dispatch, I need a supervisor on Highway 49 near mile marker 12. Immediately, the response crackled through. Copy. What's the situation? Barker paused. How to explain that he had just threatened to draw his weapon on a federal judge? Just send the sheriff. Now. Sheriff Raymond Tucker arrived in 8 minutes. He had heard the radio traffic, recognized the name, driven personally. He approached Judge Thornton's vehicle, hat literally in hand. Judge Thornton, I am so sorry. I don't know what happened here. What happened, Sheriff, is your deputy pulled me over for driving while black. He claimed my vehicle was flagged for theft. Was there such a report? Tucker checked with dispatch. There was no stolen vehicle report matching her car. No bolo. No flag of any kind. So your deputy fabricated probable cause to stop a black woman driving a nice car on a public highway, and then ordered me out of my vehicle at implied gunpoint when I questioned him. Is that accurate? Tucker had no good answer, because that was exactly what had happened. I'll be filing a formal complaint with the Georgia Peace Officers Standards and Training Council. I'll also be referring this matter to the FBI for potential civil rights violations. She looked at the sheriff. And I suggest you preserve every piece of footage from this stop, because you're going to need it. Subscribe if you want to see how evidence and witnesses can change the course of an encounter. Stories like this need to be documented. Judge Thornton arrived at her mother's house 45 minutes late. Beatrice Thornton was waiting on the porch, 87 years old, sharp as she had been at 40, worried the way only mothers worry. Vanessa, where have you been? I was about to call the hospital. I got pulled over, Mama. Pulled over? For what? For driving a nice car while black. Beatrice's face shifted. The expression of a woman who had marched in civil rights protests in the 1960s, who had been spit on, who had watched fire hoses turned on children. Baby, I thought things were supposed to be better by now. They will be, Mama. I'm going to make sure of it. She explained what had happened. The deputy, the fabricated report, the hand moving toward the weapon, the credentials that had prevented escalation. Beatrice listened. Nodded slowly. Your grandmother was stopped once. 1954, walking home from the house where she cleaned. White officer wanted to know what she was doing in that neighborhood. She told him she worked there. He told her to prove it. What did she do? Called the family she worked for from a payphone. They had to come vouch for her, like she was a runaway slave needing papers. Beatrice looked at her daughter, the federal judge, the woman who had climbed higher than anyone in their family had ever climbed. 70 years later, you had to show your credentials too. Different papers. Same reason. The doctor's appointment was rescheduled. The pastries went uneaten. Friday's ritual had been disrupted by the same forces that had disrupted black lives in Georgia for generations. But Judge Thornton made a call before she left her mother's house. FBI Atlanta Field Office. Civil Rights Division. This is United States District Judge Vanessa Thornton. I need to report a civil rights violation by a Peach County Sheriff's deputy. I have footage. I have witnesses. And I have 16 years of experience knowing exactly how to prosecute this kind of case. The investigation began that afternoon. At this point, opinions usually split. Do you think this situation could have been avoided with better training and oversight? Let us know in the comments. FBI opened the investigation within 24 hours. Georgia Bureau of Investigation assisted with evidence collection. The body cam footage was secured. The dashcam footage was subpoenaed. The dashcam told the story that Barker had tried to hide. It showed him sitting in a speed trap position on Highway 49. Showed Judge Thornton's Lexus passing at the posted speed limit. Showed Barker pulling out and following her. For 2 miles. No traffic violation observed. No erratic driving. No basis whatsoever for a stop. Just following a nice car driven by a black woman. Waiting. Deciding. Then activating his lights. This stolen vehicle report he had claimed? It didn't exist in any database. He had fabricated the entire pretext. Barker's personnel file revealed the pattern that should have ended his career years earlier. 23 prior complaints of racial profiling and pretextual stops, all marked unfounded or exonerated by internal affairs. His stop data completed the picture. During his 12 years, Barker had conducted 847 discretionary traffic stops. 612, 72%, had targeted minority drivers. His colleagues averaged 29% minority stops on the same patrol routes. The disparity was statistically undeniable, and luxury vehicles were a specific target. Barker had a documented pattern of stopping black drivers in expensive cars. Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, the vehicles he apparently believed black people couldn't legitimately own. His personal truck had a Confederate flag bumper sticker, visible in department parking lot photos. His social media, subpoenaed as part of the investigation, revealed the attitudes behind the actions. Another luxury car in the wrong hands today. Made sure to check it out. Why do these people think they can drive whatever they want? Know your place. Black families moving into nice neighborhoods. There goes the property value. The posts questioning whether black families deserved nice neighborhoods had been visible to his colleagues for years. No one had reported them. The federal grand jury convened 8 weeks after the incident. Indictments, civil rights violations, deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, filing false reports. Deputy Clint Barker would face trial for stopping a federal judge because he couldn't believe a black woman belonged in a Lexus. If accountability in policing matters to you, leave a like and share your perspective below. The federal courtroom in Atlanta drew national attention. Judge Thornton's colleagues in the Middle District had recused themselves entirely. The case was heard in the Northern District to avoid any appearance of bias. Federal judge pulled over for driving while black became the headline that followed the trial. Judge Vanessa Thornton testified on the 4th day. She didn't wear her robes, just a simple black dress. Her mother Beatrice, 87 years old, sat in the front row. I was driving to visit my mother. The same route I've taken hundreds of times. Deputy Barker followed me for 2 miles before pulling me over. Did he observe any traffic violation? No. The dashcam confirms I was obeying the speed limit. My driving was unremarkable. What reason did he give for the stop? He claimed my vehicle was flagged for theft. That was a lie. No such flag existed. What happened when you questioned him? He said that someone in my situation driving a car like mine raised questions. When I asked if he meant black, he ordered me out of the vehicle. When I refused, his hand moved toward his weapon. The body cam footage played. The jury watched Barker approach. Watched Judge Thornton remain calm. Watched the moment he said the words that would end his career. Someone in your situation, driving a car like this raises questions. Audible gasps from the gallery. Judge Thornton continued her testimony. My great-great-grandmother was born a slave 20 miles from where I was stopped. My grandfather picked cotton on land he could never own. My mother was spit on during civil rights marches. She looked at the jury. And in 2025, a federal judge was pulled over and threatened with a gun for driving a car a deputy didn't think she deserved. 6 generations in Georgia, and this is still where we are. The defense argued Barker was following procedure. The prosecutor's response was surgical. What procedure? There was no stolen vehicle report. There was no traffic violation. There was no probable cause. Deputy Barker followed Judge Thornton for 2 miles and invented a pretext because he saw a black woman in a Lexus. She displayed the pattern. 23 prior complaints, 72% minority stops, social media posts questioning whether black families deserved nice things. This wasn't procedure. This was prejudice. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty. All counts. Sentencing followed 6 weeks later. 8 years federal prison. Permanently decertified from Georgia law enforcement. Subscribe for more cases where evidence exposes what assumptions try to hide. The civil trial followed the criminal conviction. Judge Thornton sued Deputy Barker personally, the Peach County Sheriff's Office, and Peach County itself. The trial lasted 8 days. The evidence went beyond a single traffic stop. Data analysis revealed the full scope of the department's discriminatory practices. Black drivers were stopped at 5 times the rate of white drivers in Peach County. Luxury vehicles driven by minorities were a specific target, flagged for verification at 12 times the rate of identical vehicles driven by white residents. The culture that had produced Barker had also protected him. 23 complaints. All dismissed. No discipline. No retraining. No intervention. 3 other deputies were implicated in similar patterns of conduct during the civil discovery process. All were terminated before the trial concluded. Sheriff Raymond Tucker, who had arrived at the scene and failed to take immediate action, was forced to resign after the investigation revealed his systematic failure to address bias complaints. The jury deliberated 6 hours on the civil verdict. $35 million. $15 million in compensatory damages. $20 million in punitive damages. A message. One of the largest police misconduct verdicts in Georgia history. The Peach County Sheriff's Office was placed under DOJ consent decree for 10 years. The longest oversight period ever imposed on a Georgia law enforcement agency. Comprehensive reforms mandated. Documented articulable suspicion for all stops. Demographic reporting. Automatic investigation triggers when patterns emerged. Civilian Oversight Board. Mandatory bias training. The department that had enabled 12 years of discriminatory policing would spend a decade proving it had changed. Judge Thornton held a brief press conference after the verdict. This money doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't give me back that Friday morning with my mother. But it sends a message. There are consequences for treating black citizens as criminals based on what they drive. When reform follows tragedy, the numbers tell the story. Do you think consent decrees are effective at changing police culture? Share your thoughts below. Beatrice Thornton passed away 6 months after the traffic stop. She was 87 years old. She had lived to see the verdict. Lived to see her daughter stand in a courtroom and testify about 6 generations of struggle. Lived to see justice, one more time, in a lifetime that had often been denied it. Judge Thornton announced the distribution of the settlement at a press conference in Macon, her hometown, where her family had lived for 6 generations. My mother believed in justice her entire life. She marched for it. She was spit on for it. She raised children and grandchildren to fight for it. This money goes where she would have wanted it to go. $15 million to establish the Beatrice Thornton Justice Center in Macon, a facility providing free legal services to victims of police misconduct across rural Georgia. Named for a woman who had marched in the 1960s and lived to see her daughter become a federal judge. $10 million to the Equal Justice Initiative, Brian Stevenson's organization, continuing the work that had to continue. $5 million to Spelman College for scholarships for first-generation law students. The next generation of advocates. $5 million to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the organization that had fought for civil rights since before Beatrice was born. I don't need this money. What I need is change. What my mother needed was change. What 6 generations of my family needed was change. This is how we build it. Georgia's legislature acted within the year. The Thornton Act, requiring documented articulable suspicion for all traffic stops, mandatory reporting of stop demographics, and automatic investigation triggers when patterns emerged. The law ensured that what happened on Highway 49 could never happen exactly the same way again. The stretch of highway where Judge Thornton was stopped now has a historical marker. Site of the traffic stop that changed Georgia law. Drivers pass it every day. Some stop to read. Some understand what it represents. If transparency and reform matter to you, consider leaving a like so stories focused on solutions reach more viewers. Clint Barker began serving his 8-year sentence at a federal facility in Alabama. His appeals were denied. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked. His pension was forfeited. The 23 prior complaints that had been dismissed were reopened. 11 resulted in additional findings that would have supported termination years earlier. Judge Vanessa Thornton returned to her bench. The same courtroom, the same cases, civil rights violations, police misconduct, constitutional matters. But something had changed. I thought I understood what victims of profiling experienced, she said in an interview 6 months after resuming her docket. I've heard their testimony for years. I've ruled on their cases. I thought I knew. She paused. But until I was on that roadside, hands on my steering wheel, watching an officer's hand move toward his gun because I was black in a nice car, I didn't truly know. Now I know. And that knowledge makes me a better judge. Her mother's house in Fort Valley became a museum of local civil rights history. The house where Beatrice had raised her children. The house that Judge Thornton had been driving to visit that Friday morning. She still visits every Friday when her docket permits. Same route. Same Highway 49. Same silver Lexus. The historical marker is visible from the road. She passes it every time. Judge Thornton was recently nominated to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Her confirmation hearing featured testimony about the traffic stop and what it revealed about the ongoing need for civil rights vigilance. The case file remains in federal databases. Case number 2025 CR 00284. Subject: civil rights violations, deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, filing false reports. Location: Highway 49, Peach County, Georgia. Outcome: conviction. 8 years federal prison. $35 million verdict. Statewide legislation. 10-year consent decree. Institutional reform. Principle established. Credentials don't protect you from bias. Position doesn't protect you from prejudice. But evidence, procedure, and persistence can turn a violation into a vehicle for change. United States District Judge Vanessa Thornton proved that principle the only way available. By keeping her hands visible. By staying calm. By producing her credentials. By refusing to let one deputy's bias define her experience. By converting a Friday morning traffic stop into legislation that protects every driver in Georgia. The Lexus still runs. The route remains the same. The judge still visits her mother's house, now a museum, every Friday when she can. 6 generations in Georgia. 6 generations of proving they belonged. And a federal judge who proved it one more time, on a roadside, with a body cam recording everything. Subscribe for more stories examining justice, accountability, and the real impact of decisions made in moments like this.
Officer, I'm just reading in the park. What seems to be the problem?
We got a call about someone matching your description selling drugs in this area. Stand up.
Drugs? Sir, I'm paralyzed. How am I supposed to do that?
I've seen people fake that before. Get out of the chair, now.
I haven't walked in 19 years, sir.
I don't care about
Every
your...
Wednesday morning, Sergeant Major Marcus Webb went to Piedmont Park to read by the lake. His wife Angela worked the morning shift at the VA hospital. His routine was simple: coffee, wheelchair, book, peace. 19 years since the IED in Fallujah had taken his legs. 19 years of building a life around what remained. Wednesday, June 18th, was supposed to be the same. Officer Derek Rawlings, badge number 3847 with 5 years on the force, changed that. We got a call about someone matching your description selling drugs in this area. Webb looked up from his book, confused. Officer, I'm just reading in the park. What seems to be the problem? Stand up. Sir, I'm paralyzed. How am I supposed to do that? I've seen people fake that before. Get out of the chair. Now. The body cam captured what followed. Rawlings grabbing the wheelchair. Webb falling onto the pavement. A decorated combat veteran, Bronze Star, 2 Purple Hearts, 24 years of service, face down in a public park because an officer invented a drug investigation. The dispatch logs showed no such call. The description Rawlings cited didn't exist. The fabrication unraveled within hours. 12 years federal prison. $20 million settlement. And a Wednesday morning routine that resumed 3 months later. Same park, same bench, same book, because some things can't be taken away. Subscribe to the channel before we continue. Wednesday morning. Piedmont Park. 10:47 a.m. Sergeant Major Marcus Webb rolled his motorized wheelchair along the main pathway toward the lake. The same route he had taken every Wednesday for the past 5 years. His wife Angela was working the morning shift at the VA hospital, the same hospital where they had met 17 years ago, when she was his rehabilitation nurse and he was learning to live without his legs. Wednesday mornings belonged to him. Coffee from the shop on 10th Street. The bench near the water. Whatever book he was reading that week. Today it was a biography of General Colin Powell, a man who had inspired Webb's own military career, a man who had proven what black soldiers could achieve. He parked his wheelchair in his favorite spot near the lake, watched the ducks, opened his book, settled into the quiet. Joggers passed by, some nodding respectfully. Occasionally someone noticed the Purple Heart pin attached to his burgundy Howard University t-shirt and thanked him for his service. He appreciated the normalcy, the dignity of being just another person enjoying a public space. 19 years since Fallujah. The IED had detonated at 0847 local time on March 15, 2006. 3 members of his squad died instantly. Webb had pulled 2 wounded soldiers to cover before the second explosion caught him. He woke up in Landstuhl 3 days later. They told him he would never walk again. He served 5 more years anyway. Administrative roles. Advisory positions. Retired as Command Sergeant Major of the 3rd Infantry Division, the highest enlisted rank achievable. Bronze Star with Valor. 2 Purple Hearts. Legion of Merit. 24 years of service. All of it visible in the way he carried himself, even seated. What he didn't know, on the far side of the park, a woman named Diane Crawford had called 911. 54 years old. Reported a suspicious black man who was lurking and possibly dealing drugs. She was describing someone completely different, a young man in a hoodie on a bicycle. Officer Derek Rawlings received the dispatch, spotted Webb by the lake, decided he matched the description. He approached from behind, cast a shadow over the book. Webb looked up. Some encounters change everything within seconds. Have you ever witnessed a moment where you knew something was about to go wrong? Share your experience in the comments. Officer, I'm just reading in the park. What seems to be the problem? Officer Derek Rawlings. Badge number 3847. 5 years on the Atlanta Police Department. The body cam mounted on his chest was recording. We got a call about someone matching your description selling drugs in this area. Stand up. Webb looked down at his legs, visibly atrophied beneath the gray sweatpants. Motionless for nearly 2 decades. Drugs? Sir, I'm paralyzed. How am I supposed to do that? I've seen people fake that before. Get out of the chair. Now. Webb's voice tightened. The controlled discipline of someone who had commanded soldiers in combat. I haven't walked in 19 years, sir. I don't care about your story. Either you get up, or I'm pulling you out myself. Webb maintained composure despite the threat. 24 years of military discipline. 2 combat deployments where panic meant death. Officer, I am Sergeant Major Marcus Webb, United States Army, retired. I was paralyzed by an IED in Fallujah in 2006. I have 2 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star. This wheelchair is my legs. I am not getting out of it, and you are not touching me. Rawlings stepped closer. I don't care if you were in the Marines. Army, not Marines. Learn the difference. Webb's voice went cold. And that Purple Heart on my chest isn't a fashion accessory. Rawlings reached for Webb's arm. You're being detained for investigation. Webb pulled back. Do not touch me. I know my rights. I served 24 years defending them. You have no probable cause, no warrant, no legal basis to detain a disabled veteran reading a book in a public park. A jogger had stopped nearby, watching, pulling out her phone to record. Other parkgoers were gathering. The particular magnetism of a confrontation in progress. Webb kept his hands visible, stayed calm, documented verbally. For the record, I am refusing consent to any search. I am not resisting arrest because I have not been lawfully arrested. I am a paralyzed veteran with a spinal cord injury. I cannot stand or walk. Any attempt to force me from this wheelchair will constitute assault on a disabled person. Rawlings' jaw tightened. I said get out of the chair. And I said I physically cannot. That is not defiance. That is medical fact. My spine was severed at T10 in Fallujah. I have VA medical records. I have military service records. I have 19 years of living in this chair. What I do not have is the ability to stand. The body cam captured every word. The phones of witnesses captured every angle. The evidence was multiplying by the second. When procedure meets prejudice, the footage tells the truth. If you believe documentation matters in situations like these, consider leaving a like. It helps more people understand why protocol exists. Rawlings grabbed Webb's arm and yanked. He attempted to pull a paralyzed man from his wheelchair by force. Webb gripped the armrests. The instinct of someone who had learned to navigate the world from a seated position. I can't walk. My spine is severed. What are you doing? Rawlings pulled harder. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting. I'm paralyzed. Webb's grip failed. He was pulled from his wheelchair and crashed onto the concrete pathway. His legs crumpled unnaturally beneath him. Unable to move. Unable to brace. Unable to do anything but fall. His book went flying. The Colin Powell biography scattered across the pavement. His Purple Heart pin skidded across the concrete. The medal he had earned pulling wounded soldiers to safety. Webb landed hard on his shoulder. His face scraped the pathway. The rough concrete tearing skin. My legs don't work. I told you I'm paralyzed. I can't stand up. Rawlings stood over him. Then stop playing games and show me some ID. Webb's face was pressed to concrete that had been warming in the June sun. My wallet is in the bag on my chair. I can't reach it because I can't move my legs. Gasps of horror from the gathering crowd. Multiple phones recording. The jogger who had stopped earlier. A mother with children who covered their eyes. An elderly couple frozen in shock. Someone screamed from the crowd. He's disabled. What are you doing? Webb lay on the ground. Shoulder dislocated. He could feel it. Face bleeding. Dignity shattered. But his voice remained steady. The discipline that had survived Fallujah. Officer Rawlings, that's your name on your badge. I want your supervisor here immediately. I want EMS. And I want your body cam footage preserved. What you just did was assault on a disabled veteran. Federal offense. Rawlings stood over him. The realization beginning to penetrate. Webb continued from the ground. I have served this country for 24 years. I was paralyzed protecting American soldiers. I have 2 Purple Hearts. And you just pulled me out of my wheelchair because you didn't believe a black man could be disabled. The crowd had grown to 30 people. All recording. All witnesses. Every single one of these people has footage. Your career is over. The only question is whether you make it worse. Subscribe if you want to see how evidence and witnesses can change the course of an encounter. Stories like this need to be documented. A white man in his 60s pushed through the crowd. Running clothes. Military bearing. The particular posture that never leaves a career officer. Retired Army Colonel Thomas Henderson had been jogging nearby when he heard the commotion. He recognized the Purple Heart pin lying on the concrete before he fully understood what had happened. Officer, stand down. His voice carried the authority of 30 years of command. That man is a decorated combat veteran. I can see his Purple Heart on the ground. He's paralyzed. What in God's name are you doing? Rawlings turned. Sir, stay back. I'm a retired colonel, United States Army. That man outranks me. He was a command sergeant major, the highest enlisted rank in the entire military. And you just pulled him out of his wheelchair onto concrete. Henderson knelt beside Webb. Sergeant Major, are you injured? Webb's cheek was still pressed to the pavement. Blood trickling from the abrasions. My shoulder. Might be dislocated. But I felt worse. Fallujah was worse than this. Henderson looked up at Rawlings. The contempt of an officer who had spent 3 decades earning the right to judge. You should be ashamed of yourself. This man saved American lives. He pulled wounded soldiers to safety under enemy fire. He was paralyzed serving his country. And you treated him like garbage. He turned back to Webb. Sergeant Major, I'm calling EMS. I'm calling the VA hospital. And I'm calling every military contact I have. This officer's career ends today. Rawlings's face had gone pale. The magnitude beginning to register. A command sergeant major. Purple Heart. Bronze Star. 24 years of service. Pulled from his wheelchair onto concrete because an officer assumed black men in wheelchairs were faking. Henderson stayed beside Webb. Protected him. Bore witness. Don't move, Sergeant Major. Help is coming. I can't move, Colonel. That's the point. Haven't been able to move my legs in 19 years. That's what I was trying to explain. I know. The whole world is going to know by tonight. The phones kept recording. The evidence kept mounting. And a retired colonel knelt in a public park, protecting a fellow soldier who had already given everything. At this point, opinions usually split. Do you think this situation could have been avoided if the officer had simply verified the disability? Let us know in the comments. The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. Paramedics carefully assessed Webb on the ground. Dislocated shoulder. Facial abrasions. No new spinal complications. His existing injury prevented him from feeling the lower body impact. They lifted him back into his wheelchair. Gentle. Professional. The way Rawlings should have treated him from the start. Colonel Henderson had called the VA hospital. Asked for Angela Webb. She arrived 25 minutes later. Still in her nursing scrubs. She had left her shift the moment she received the call. She saw her husband being treated by paramedics. Saw the blood on his face. Saw the wheelchair that had been tipped over. She ran to him sobbing. Marcus, what happened? Webb tried to keep it together. For her. The way he had tried to keep it together through everything. Fallujah, rehabilitation, 19 years of adapting. Some cop didn't believe I was paralyzed, baby. Thought I was faking it. Angela turned on Rawlings. The fury in her eyes made everyone step back. 15 years of nursing wounded veterans. 15 years of seeing what war did to bodies and minds. 15 years of watching her husband rebuild himself from nothing. My husband was paralyzed saving American soldiers in Iraq. He has served this country for 24 years. He can't walk because he was protecting your freedom. She stepped toward Rawlings. He actually retreated. And you pulled him out of his wheelchair. Rawlings had no response. No defense. No explanation that would help. Angela turned back to her husband. Held his face. Looked at the abrasions. Baby, I'm so sorry. I should have been here. You were at work. Taking care of other veterans. You can't be everywhere. This shouldn't have happened. Not to you. Not to anyone. She looked at the crowd. At the phones. At Colonel Henderson, who had stayed through everything. This ends today. I don't care what it takes. This officer is never going to do this to anyone else. Webb held his wife's hand. I know, Angela. I know. The paramedics finished their assessment. Recommended transport for the shoulder. Webb looked at Rawlings one final time. I'll see you in federal court. If accountability and how disabled veterans are treated matters to you, leave a like and share your perspective below. The body cam footage and crowd videos went viral within hours. The image of a Purple Heart veteran being pulled from his wheelchair became a national outrage. Viewed 23 million times before the weekend ended. FBI opened a civil rights investigation within 48 hours. Atlanta PD chief held an emergency press conference, apologizing personally and announcing Rawlings' immediate suspension. Military officials from the Pentagon to Fort Benning issued statements condemning the treatment of Sergeant Major Webb. The Army Chief of Staff called it a disgrace to every veteran who has served. The original 911 call was pulled and transcribed. 911, what's your emergency? There's a suspicious black man in Piedmont Park. He's lurking around. I think he might be dealing drugs. Can you describe him? Young. Wearing a hoodie. On a bicycle. Young. Hoodie. Bicycle. Webb was 52. Wearing a Howard University t-shirt. In a wheelchair. The description matched nothing about him. Rawlings had invented the connection entirely. His personnel file revealed the pattern that should have ended his career years earlier. 18 prior complaints of excessive force and racial profiling. All marked unfounded by internal affairs. 3 prior incidents of accusing people of faking disabilities. A woman with cerebral palsy. A man with prosthetic legs. A teenager with muscular dystrophy. All accused of faking. All cleared. All complaints dismissed. Text messages subpoenaed from his phone completed the picture. Love calling out fakers. Makes them prove they're really crippled. But I can make the wheelchair guy stand up. Most of these disabled people are scamming the system. He had targeted Webb specifically to prove a theory. The same theory he had tested on disabled citizens for years. The federal grand jury convened 8 weeks after the incident. Indictments, civil rights violations, assault on a disabled person, assault on a veteran, deprivation of rights under color of law, filing false reports, conduct unbecoming. Officer Derek Rawlings would face trial for pulling a paralyzed combat veteran from his wheelchair onto concrete. When patterns exist in personnel files, they tell a story beyond any single incident. Do you think departments do enough to address repeated complaints? Tell us in the comments. The federal courtroom in Atlanta drew national attention. Military veterans packed the courtroom every day, several in wheelchairs themselves. Solidarity from those who understood what Webb had sacrificed. Sergeant Major Marcus Webb testified on the 4th day. He wore his Army dress uniform, 24 years of service ribbons and decorations displayed. Bronze Star with Valor, 2 Purple Hearts, Legion of Merit. He testified from his wheelchair. I was paralyzed at 29 years old. I spent 2 years learning to live in this chair. I built a life, a family, a sense of dignity. He looked at Rawlings. And Officer Rawlings took all of that away in 30 seconds on a park pathway. He looked at me and saw a black man in a wheelchair who must be faking, must be a criminal, must be worthless. He gestured to the medals on his chest. He didn't see 24 years of service, 3 combat deployments, a Purple Heart, a family who loves me. He saw what his prejudice told him to see. The bodycam footage played. The jury watched Rawlings approach, watched Webb explain his disability calmly, watched Rawlings grab the wheelchair, watched a decorated veteran fall onto concrete. My legs don't work. I told you I'm paralyzed. Angela Webb testified about finding her husband on the ground. I've worked with wounded veterans for 15 years. I've seen men who lost legs, lost arms, lost their minds to war. Marcus kept his spirit through all of it. Her voice broke. And that officer broke something in him. I'm still trying to help him rebuild. The text messages were displayed. Love calling out fakers. But I can make the wheelchair guy stand up. The defense argued mistake of fact. Good faith. The prosecutor's response was precise. The 911 call described a young man in a hoodie on a bicycle. Sergeant Major Webb is 52, wearing a t-shirt, in a wheelchair. There was no match. Officer Rawlings invented the connection because he saw a black man and decided to prove he was faking a disability. She displayed the pattern. 18 prior complaints. 3 prior disability accusations. 5 years of documented bias never addressed. The jury deliberated 3 hours. Guilty. All counts. Sentencing followed 6 weeks later. Officer Rawlings, you assaulted a decorated combat veteran. You showed contempt for his service and his disability. You acted with malice and prejudice. 12 years federal prison. Enhanced for targeting a disabled veteran and pattern of prior conduct. Permanently barred from law enforcement. Subscribe for more cases where evidence exposes what assumptions try to hide. The civil trial followed the criminal conviction. Sergeant Major Webb sued the city of Atlanta for the actions of its officer. The trial lasted 6 days. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Verdict, $20 million. One of the largest police brutality verdicts in Georgia history. Webb announced the distribution at a press conference at the Atlanta VA hospital, the same hospital where his wife had worked for 15 years. I didn't ask for this money. I asked for accountability. But since it's here, it goes where it belongs. $8 million to the Paralyzed Veterans of America, the organization that had supported Webb through 19 years of adaptation. $5 million to establish the Webb Center for Disabled Veterans at the Atlanta VA, a facility dedicated to rehabilitation and transition services. $4 million to scholarships for children of disabled veterans. Education for families who had sacrificed. $3 million to spinal cord injury research at Shepherd Center in Atlanta. Finding treatments so future soldiers might not face what Webb had faced. I spent 24 years serving this country. 19 of those years, I served from this chair. The money goes to the people who helped me survive it, and to making sure others have better chances than I did. 6 Atlanta PD supervisors who had dismissed prior complaints against Rawlings were disciplined or terminated. The Internal Affairs Division was restructured. The department was placed under DOJ consent decree. 5 years of federal oversight. Comprehensive disability sensitivity training mandated. Georgia's legislature acted within the year. The Webb Act, requiring immediate supervisor notification when any encounter involves a person with visible disability, and establishing criminal penalties for disability-based harassment by law enforcement. The law ensured that what happened in Piedmont Park could never happen the same way again. When reform follows tragedy, the numbers tell the story. Do you think police departments need more training on interacting with disabled individuals? Share your thoughts below. Derek Rawlings began serving his 12-year sentence at a federal facility in Alabama. His appeals were denied. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked. His pension was forfeited. The 18 prior complaints that had been dismissed were reopened. 7 resulted in additional findings that would have supported termination years earlier. Sergeant Major Marcus Webb returned to Piedmont Park 3 months after the verdict. Same pathway, same spot by the lake, same Wednesday morning routine. This time, he wasn't alone. The mayor of Atlanta was there, the new chief of police, Colonel Henderson, who had intervened that day, and 200 veterans in wheelchairs. They had come from across Georgia, from neighboring states, veterans who had heard the story and wanted to show solidarity. 200 wheelchairs, 200 veterans. All there to read with Sergeant Major Webb. The park had never seen anything like it. Webb rolled to his usual spot. The same spot where Rawlings had pulled him onto concrete. The same view of the lake. The same peaceful morning. But something was different now. A bench had been installed. Bronze plaque on the backrest. Reserved for Sergeant Major Marcus Webb, who served his country for 24 years and refused to let anyone take his dignity. Webb sat in his wheelchair beside the bench. Opened his book, the Colin Powell biography, finally finished and replaced with a new one. The mayor spoke briefly. The chief apologized publicly. Colonel Henderson said a few words about service and sacrifice. Then everyone fell silent. 200 veterans. Reading in a park. Proving that dignity couldn't be taken, only defended. The case file remains in federal databases. Case number 2025 CR 02847. Subject: civil rights violations, assault on disabled person, assault on veteran, deprivation of rights under color of law, filing false reports. Location: Piedmont Park, Atlanta, Georgia. Outcome: conviction. 12 years federal prison. $20 million settlement. Statewide legislation. Institutional reform. Principle established. Wheelchairs don't diminish worth. Service doesn't expire. Disabilities aren't performances. And some Wednesday mornings are worth defending, no matter what it costs. Sergeant Major Marcus Webb proved that principle the only way available. By sitting in his park. By reading his book. By refusing to let one officer's bias define his life. By returning to the same spot, surrounded by 200 brothers and sisters who understood what service really meant. The bench is still there. The plaque tells the story. And every Wednesday morning, a decorated veteran returns to read by the lake. Same routine. Same dignity. Unbroken. Subscribe for more stories examining service, sacrifice, and the real impact of decisions made in moments like this.
I'm sorry, she called you because I'm depositing my own money?
Sir, we received a report about suspicious activity.
Can a black man be successful no more?
Sir, the bank manager said you couldn't verify where the funds came from.
She didn't ask me where it came from. She saw a black man with cash and panicked.
I understand.
Raymond Vincent Ashford III was depositing money into his own bank when police arrived. His bank. The institution his grandfather had founded. The company where he had served as CEO for 12 years. $18.7 billion in assets. 347 branches. His name on the corporate letterhead. His portrait in the lobby. Patricia Holloway, branch manager, 8 years with the company, saw none of it. She saw a black man with $50,000 in cash and called 911. There's a black man at the counter with a large amount of cash. It looks suspicious. She never spoke to him. Never checked his ID. Never verified his account in the system. Never glanced at the portrait hanging 20 feet behind her. Sir, we received a report about suspicious activity. Ashford turned from the teller window. I'm sorry, you called the police because I'm depositing my own money? The body cam captured the moment he reached into his jacket. The officer's tensing. The business card that emerged. My name is Raymond Vincent Ashford III. I am the Chief Executive Officer of First Continental Financial Group. This is my bank. I own 347 branches, including this one. He pointed to the wall behind them. My portrait is hanging in the lobby. The officers looked. The portrait looked back. Same face. Same man. Same CEO they had just approached as a suspect. Holloway was terminated before she could return to her office. The investigation that followed changed the company forever. Subscribe to the channel before we continue. Wednesday afternoon. First Continental Bank, Buckhead Branch. One of Atlanta's wealthiest neighborhoods. Raymond Vincent Ashford III walked through the glass doors at 2:15 p.m. Charcoal suit, tailored but not ostentatious. No tie. No cufflinks. Casual by his standards. He was conducting what his executive assistant called a mystery shopper day. Unannounced visits to branches. No entourage. No advance notice. Walk in like any customer and evaluate the experience. 12 years as CEO. Hundreds of these visits. The practice that kept him connected to how his bank actually served customers. This morning he had withdrawn $50,000 in cash from a personal account at a competitor, kept specifically for these tests. Large cash transactions revealed how staff handled pressure and protocol. He approached the teller window. Jessica Chun, according to her nameplate, 24 years old, 2 years with the bank. Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you today? I'd like to make a deposit. Cash. He began counting out the bundled hundreds. $50,000 spread across the marble counter. Chin was professional. Asked for ID. Prepared the deposit slip. Made conversation. Everything by the book. Ashford was pleased. This was exactly what he wanted to see. Then he noticed movement in his peripheral vision. A woman had emerged from the back office. Branch manager, based on her position and bearing. She stood near her door, staring at him. Not approaching. Not offering assistance. Just watching. Patricia Holloway. 8 years with First Continental. Never met the CEO in person. She retreated to her office without a word. Ashford noted it mentally. Continued his transaction. What he didn't see, Holloway lifting her phone. Her voice hushed, urgent. 911. What's your emergency? There's a black man at the counter with a large amount of cash. It looks suspicious. I think it might be drug money or something. Can you send someone? Can you describe what's suspicious about it? He just has a lot of cash. It doesn't look right. Please send someone. 8 minutes later, 2 Atlanta PD officers walked through the doors. Situations like this often look ordinary at first. Have you ever seen customer service handled differently when large cash transactions are involved? Share your thoughts in the comments. Officer Bradley Warren approached the teller window. His body cam was active. Recording. Ashford had nearly completed his transaction. The cash was counted. The deposit slip was ready. Chin was entering the information into her terminal. Sir, we need to speak with you. Ashford turned. Hands still resting on the counter beside the cash. I'm sorry, you called the police because I'm depositing my own money? Warren maintained professional distance. Sir, we received a report about suspicious activity. Ashford laughed slightly. The particular laugh of someone experiencing something absurd. Can't a black man be successful no more? Warren glanced at his partner. Back to Ashford. Sir, the bank manager said you couldn't verify where the funds came from. Ashford looked over his shoulder. Holloway was hovering near her office door. Face pale. Watching the confrontation she had initiated. She didn't ask me where it came from. She saw a black man with cash and panicked. Warren shifted slightly. The body language of someone trying to de-escalate. I understand your frustration, but we still need to verify. Verify what exactly? I'm making a deposit at a bank. With my identification. Into my account. What crime has been alleged? Warren had no good answer. Because no crime had been alleged. Just suspicious black man with cash. Customers had stopped their transactions. Several phones were raised. Recording. Chin stood frozen behind her window. Eyes wide. Hands shaking. Sir, if you could just step over here so we can. I'm not stepping anywhere. I'm completing a legal transaction at a bank. Ashford reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Both officers tensed. Hands moving toward their weapons. Ashford paused. Made eye contact with Warren. I'm reaching for my wallet. There's a business card inside that will explain who I am. He moved with deliberate slowness. Extracted the wallet. Removed a card. Handed it to Officer Warren. The card read, Raymond Vincent Ashford, 3 Chief Executive Officer, First Continental Financial Group. Warren looked at the card. Looked at Ashford. Looked at the portrait hanging on the wall behind him. Same face. Same man. Same tailored bearing. This is my bank. I own 347 branches. Including this one. He pointed to the portrait. That's me. I'm the CEO. I was conducting an unannounced evaluation of customer service. Warren's expression cycled through confusion, recognition, and horror. And your suspicious activity is me depositing money into my own institution. If professionalism and protocol matter in moments like these, consider leaving a like. It helps more people understand how proper procedures are supposed to work. The lobby had gone completely silent. Every customer, every employee, every person in that branch watching the moment unfold. Officer Warren looked at the portrait again. Looked at the business card. Looked at the man standing calmly at the teller window. Mr. Ashford, You responded to a call. I understand that. You were professional. You attempted to verify. That's proper policing. He turned to the teller. Ms. Chun, you've done everything correctly. You followed protocol. You handled this transaction exactly as you should have. You have nothing to apologize for. Chin's eyes were wet. Her voice barely audible. Mr. Ashford, sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You didn't call the police. You did your job. He pulled up his account on her screen. The display showed his Tier 1 executive account status. His full name. His position. The information that had been available the entire time, if anyone had bothered to check. Ashford turned to face Patricia Holloway. She was rooted to the spot near her office door. Face ashen, hands trembling. Ms. Holloway, that is your name, correct? I've seen your personnel file. Yes, sir. Ms. Holloway, I'd like you to explain to these officers, and to the customers in this branch, and to the employees who work for me, why you called the police on the CEO of this bank. Holloway's mouth opened. No words emerged. You didn't speak to me. You didn't check my identification. You didn't verify my account. You didn't follow a single protocol that I personally helped design for handling large cash transactions. I didn't know. I thought. You thought what? That a black man with money must be a criminal? Is that what you thought? He stepped toward her. Not aggressive. Just present. In MY Bank. A bank my grandfather started in 1952 because white-owned banks wouldn't give loans to black families. Holloway had no answer. Because there was no answer that would help her. The lobby remained silent. Phone still recording. The moment documented from every angle. My grandfather built this institution so black families could be treated with dignity. 73 years later, his grandson has police called on him for making a deposit. He looked at Holloway. That is why we have protocols. That is why we have training. And that is why Ms. Holloway no longer works for First Continental Financial Group. Subscribe if you're interested in real stories where outcomes hinge on evidence, procedure, and how situations are handled under pressure. Holloway's face crumpled. Mr. Ashford, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You called the police on a customer, a black customer, based on nothing but the color of his skin and the amount of money in his hands. In a black-owned bank, there is no conversation to be had. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number. This is Raymond Ashford. I'm at the Buckhead branch. I need security here immediately, and I need HR to begin separation procedures for the branch manager. Patricia Holloway. Employee ID should be in the system. He ended the call. Ms. Holloway, please collect your personal belongings from your office. Your access to bank systems has been terminated as of this moment. Our security team will escort you out. HR will contact you regarding your separation from the company. I've worked here for 8 years. And in 8 years, you never learned the fundamental principle this bank was built on. Dignity for all customers, regardless of what they look like. He turned back to the officers. Gentlemen, I won't be filing a complaint against you. You responded to a call. You were professional. You attempted to de-escalate. That's proper procedure. Warren nodded, still processing what he had walked into. I apologize for the inconvenience, Mr. Ashford. The inconvenience isn't yours. It belongs to the person who made the call. He turned to Jessica Chun. Ms. Chun, I'll be noting your professionalism in your file. You handled a difficult situation exactly as you should have. Expect to hear from HR about a commendation. Chun was crying now. Relief and shock and the overwhelming nature of what had just happened. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. You earned it by doing your job correctly. That's all any of us can do. Security arrived within 10 minutes. 2 officers from First Continental's internal team. Holloway was escorted to her office, collected her belongings under supervision, walked out through the same lobby where she had called police on her own CEO. Customers parted as she passed. No one spoke. The silence was its own verdict. The Buckhead branch of First Continental Financial Group had a new story now, a story that would be told for years. The day the CEO walked in unannounced. The day the branch manager called police. The day everything changed. At this point, opinions usually split. Do you think this situation could have been avoided with a simple verification step? Let us know in the comments. The investigation began within hours. First Continental's internal security team pulled all footage from the Buckhead branch. The 911 call was obtained through Atlanta PD records. Holloway's personnel file was reviewed by HR and legal. The pattern emerged immediately. 3 prior incidents involving black customers and large cash transactions. All during Holloway's tenure as branch manager. All handled quietly with retraining and coaching. 2021, black business owner depositing $23,000 in cash. Holloway called the regional security office claiming suspicious activity. Investigation found no wrongdoing. Holloway received verbal counseling. 2022, black real estate investor depositing $41,000. Holloway delayed the transaction for 2 hours while requesting additional verification. Customer filed complaint. Holloway received written warning. 2023, black doctor depositing $18,000. Holloway personally called the customer's employer to verify income. Customer filed complaint. Holloway received retraining on privacy protocols. 3 incidents. 3 black customers. 3 times the pattern was documented but not addressed with termination. Ashford reviewed the file personally. Who approved these responses? Regional HR, sir. Standard progressive discipline. Standard discipline for calling police on customers? For violating their privacy? For treating black customers as criminals? He ordered a company-wide audit. Every branch manager. Every customer service complaint involving race or large cash transactions from minority customers. The results arrived within 2 weeks. 12 additional employees across the company with similar patterns. Complaints documented. Retraining completed. Behavior unchanged. All 12 were terminated. First Continental's board of directors was briefed. The executive team was informed. The pattern that had been allowed to continue was now being addressed at every level. Mandatory bias training. Company-wide. Starting with the executive team. New mystery shopper programs. Diverse testers conducting evaluations at every branch. Random. Unannounced. Documented. A new reporting system for discriminatory behavior. Anonymous hotline. Independent review. Consequences guaranteed. The 911 call was released to the public, with First Continental's permission. There's a black man at the counter with a large amount of cash. It looks suspicious. I think it might be drug money or something. The words that had been spoken about the CEO of an $18.7 billion institution. The video went viral within hours. Bank CEO has cops called on him at his own bank. 23 million views in the first week. If accountability in leadership and workplace standards matters to you, leave a like and share your perspective below. Ashford held a press conference at the Buckhead branch 1 week after the incident. He stood beneath his own portrait. The same portrait that had hung there while Holloway called 911. My grandfather, Raymond Ashford Sr., started this bank in Detroit in 1952 because black families couldn't get loans, couldn't open accounts, couldn't be treated with dignity at white-owned banks. He paused. 73 years later, the CEO of his bank had the police called on him for making a deposit. That tells you how far we still have to go. He announced a $25 million initiative. $10 million for bias training across the financial services industry. Partnerships with other institutions. Shared curriculum. Measurable outcomes. He had targeted Bishop before any pretextual justification existed. The stolen vehicle report was invented after the decision to stop had already been made. Medical examination at Vanderbilt documented Bishop's injuries. First-degree burns to both forearms, consistent with prolonged contact with superheated asphalt. Facial abrasions requiring treatment. Photographs documented the damage. The burns would heal. The scars would remain. FBI Civil Rights Division assumed investigative lead. A federal officer had been assaulted. The case warranted federal attention. Deputy Mitchell cooperated fully. His testimony established the sequence. His body cam provided the evidence. Did Deputy Brennan verify the stolen vehicle report before the stop? No. Did he run the plates before approaching the vehicle? No. Did he examine Marshall Bishop's credentials before using force? No. They were on the passenger seat the whole time. He never looked at them. When did you examine the credentials? After Deputy Brennan had Marshall Bishop on the ground for almost a minute. I could see them through the window. I picked them up. They were real. I told Kyle to stop. What was his response? He said they could be fake. But they weren't. I've seen federal credentials before. These were real. The federal grand jury convened 9 weeks after the incident. Indictments: assault on a federal officer, civil rights violations, deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, filing false reports, obstruction of justice. Deputy Kyle Brennan would face trial for pinning a U.S. Marshal to scorching pavement. The federal courtroom in Nashville drew national attention. A decorated U.S. Marshal pinned face down on hot pavement. The body cam footage that had already been viewed millions of times. Deputy U.S. Marshal Terrence Bishop testified on the 4th day. He wore his dress uniform, 23 years of service ribbons, and commendations displayed. I informed Deputy Brennan that I was a federal law enforcement officer. I told him I was armed. I told him my credentials were on the passenger seat. I asked how he wanted me to proceed. What was his response? He ignored the protocol, demanded license and registration. Then claimed my government vehicle was stolen. Was it stolen? No. The investigation confirmed no such report existed. He fabricated the entire pretext. What happened when you questioned the validity of the stop? He ordered me out at gunpoint, slammed me onto the hood of my truck, then forced me face down onto the pavement. The asphalt had been in the sun all morning. It was hot enough to cause burns. Did you resist? I did not. I kept my hands visible. I repeatedly identified myself as a federal officer. I asked him to check my credentials. He refused. The body cam footage played. The jury watched Brennan ignore Bishop's identification, watched him fabricate a stolen vehicle claim, watched him pin a federal officer to scorching pavement while the credentials sat untouched 3 feet away. I'm a federal officer. Check my credentials. Stop resisting. Medical testimony documented the injuries. First-degree burns to both forearms. Facial abrasions. Photographs showed the damage, red, blistered skin from contact with superheated asphalt. The text messages were displayed. Following a nice truck with fed plates. Black driver. Let's see what he's really about. Not this time. Pulling him over. The defense argued good faith response to a potential stolen vehicle. Following procedure. The prosecutor's closing addressed each claim. Good faith doesn't explain fabricating a stolen vehicle report. Procedure doesn't include ignoring federal credentials. And nothing justifies pinning a federal officer to pavement hot enough to cause burns while his badge sits 3 feet away. She displayed the pattern. 14 prior complaints. 75% minority stops. 4 years of targeting black drivers on I-40. Deputy Brennan didn't see a federal officer. He saw a black man in a nice truck who didn't fit his expectations, and he decided to teach him a lesson about his place. The jury deliberated 3 hours. Guilty. All counts. Sentencing followed 8 weeks later. Deputy Brennan, you assaulted a federal officer with 23 years of distinguished service. You fabricated evidence to justify your actions. You caused physical injury that required medical treatment. And you showed no regard for the constitutional rights you swore to protect. The judge reviewed the guidelines. The enhancement for assaulting a federal officer. The enhancement for causing physical injury. 12 years federal prison. Enhanced sentence as provided by statute. Brennan was led from the courtroom in handcuffs. The deputy who had pinned a marshal to the ground would now understand what federal custody meant. The civil settlement was announced 4 months after sentencing. Madison County agreed to pay $5.8 million rather than face extended litigation that would expose decades of systemic failure. The amount reflected not just one assault, but a pattern that supervisors had enabled. Deputy U.S. Marshal Terrence Bishop announced the distribution at a press conference in Memphis, his hometown, where his father had driven a sanitation truck for 35 years, where his great-uncle had marched with the workers Dr. King came to support in 1968. My family has served this community for generations. My father picked up your garbage. My great-uncle fought for dignity. I spent 23 years protecting federal witnesses and apprehending dangerous fugitives. He paused. And on August 4th, I was pinned face down on hot pavement because a deputy couldn't believe a black man might actually be federal law enforcement. He announced the allocation. $2 million to establish the Bishop Foundation, supporting families of fallen law enforcement officers, the people who sacrificed everything. $1.5 million to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, honoring those who served. $1 million to scholarships at Tennessee State University for criminal justice students, the next generation of officers. $1.3 million to the Memphis Sanitation Workers Memorial, in honor of his great-uncle and the 1968 strike that had brought Dr. King to Memphis. I don't need this money. What I need is change. What I need is a world where federal officers and all citizens can drive down a highway without being assaulted because of their skin color. Madison County Sheriff was forced to resign. The investigation had revealed systematic dismissal of racial profiling complaints. 14 complaints against Brennan, all marked unfounded. The culture had protected him until he targeted someone who couldn't be ignored. The department was placed under DOJ consent decree. 5 years of federal oversight. Mandatory bias training. Required verification protocols before any use of force. Deputy Mitchell, whose body cam had captured everything and who had eventually intervened, received a suspension and mandatory retraining. His willingness to check the credentials and testify against Brennan was noted in his file. Tennessee's legislature acted within the year. The Bishop Act, requiring verification of federal credentials before any use of force against individuals claiming federal law enforcement status. The law ensured that what happened on I-40 could never happen the same way again. In 1952, my grandfather opened a bank because black families couldn't get basic financial services. 70 years later, I'm still fighting versions of the same battle. The forms change. The assumptions don't. Do you think things are getting better? I think every generation has to do the work. My grandfather did his. My father did his. I'm doing mine. My children will do theirs. Progress isn't automatic, it's earned. The case file remains in First Continental's corporate archives. Incident date, March 12, 2025. Location, Buckhead Branch, Atlanta, Georgia. Branch manager called police on CEO conducting unannounced customer service evaluation. Outcome, immediate termination. Company-wide audit. 13 additional terminations. $25 million reform initiative. 34% increase in new accounts. Institutional change. Principle established. Protocols exist for a reason. Assumptions aren't evidence. And some deposits reveal more about an institution than any quarterly report. Raymond Vincent Ashford 3 proved that principle the only way available. By walking into his own bank. By conducting a routine transaction. By experiencing what his customers experienced. By converting an incident into reform. The portrait still hangs in the Buckhead branch. The same portrait that was there when Holloway called 911. Now it hangs above a plaque that tells the full story. 3 generations of building something. One moment that tested it. And a CEO who turned humiliation into transformation. Because that's what his grandfather would have done. Subscribe for more stories examining leadership, accountability, and the real impact of decisions made in moments like this.
Our review is now complete. For more unedited field recordings, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching Bodycam Incident Reports.